In May of 2026, the president of China sat across from the president of the United States and asked him a question that had nothing to do with trade or tariffs or Taiwan. He asked whether their two countries could avoid something historians have been quietly worried about for over a decade. A pattern with a name borrowed from a war that ended more than 2,000 years ago. It's called Thucydides Trap. And once you understand what it actually is, you'll start seeing it everywhere in history, because over the last 500 years, this exact pattern has appeared 16 times. 12 of those times, it ended in war. Before we get into this, if you're new here, welcome. This channel covers real declassified history, hidden operations, and the patterns behind events the world usually only sees in hindsight. If topics like this interest you, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next one. And if you've got thoughts on where you think today's world is heading, I'd genuinely like to read them in the comments. Now let's go back to where this all started, with two rival city-states and a historian who was watching it happen in real time. Roughly 2,400 years ago, the ancient Greek world was dominated by two powers. Sparta had spent generations as the region's unquestioned military authority. Athens, meanwhile, was rising fast, building a navy, expanding its influence, growing wealthier and more confident by the year. A historian and military general named Thucydides watched this rivalry unfold firsthand and eventually wrote what may be the single most quoted sentence in the history of international relations. He explained, in essence, that it wasn't Athens' ambition alone that caused the devastating war that followed. It was the fear that Athens' rise created inside Sparta. That single insight sat mostly in academic circles for over 2,000 years. Then, in 2012, a Harvard political scientist named Graham Allison gave it a name that made it impossible to ignore: Thucydides Trap. He defined it simply: the dangerous structural stress that occurs when a rising power threatens to displace an established ruling one. Allison didn't stop at theory. He and his team at Harvard's Belfer Center went back through 500 years of history, searching for every case where a rising power seriously challenged a ruling one. They found 16 cases that matched the pattern. 12 of them ended in war. Some of these cases are the kind of history most people already know, just never through this particular lens. Germany's rapid rise in the early 20th century, both economically and militarily, unsettled a Britain that had spent a century as the world's dominant naval power, a tension that helped drag Europe into the First World War. A few decades later, Japan's expansion across the Pacific put it on a direct collision course with American interests, a rivalry that ended at Pearl Harbor and pulled the United States fully into the Second World War. But here's the part almost nobody focuses on, because it's the most important part. 4 of those 16 cases did not end in war, and studying why is arguably more valuable than studying the 12 that did. One of the clearest examples is the Cold War itself. For decades, the Soviet Union rose to challenge American global dominance, and by most measures of the pattern, the conditions for war were all present: deep ideological conflict, direct military buildup, proxy conflicts fought through third countries, and a level of mutual fear that at several points brought the world within hours of catastrophe. And yet, direct war between the two superpowers never happened. Instead, decades of careful, often quiet diplomacy back-channel communication and deliberate restraint on both sides allowed the rivalry to eventually resolve without a single shot fired between them directly. Allison's own research points to this as proof that the trap is not automatic. It's a dangerous tendency, not an unavoidable fate. Which brings us to the 17th case historians are watching unfold right now, the one nobody has finished writing yet. China's economic and military rise over the past 3 decades has been faster and larger in scale than almost any of the previous 15 cases combined. By some economic measurements, China had already overtaken the United States by the mid-2000s. It is now the largest trading partner for well over 100 countries, including some of America's closest allies. Its Belt and Road Initiative has extended economic influence across Asia, Africa, and Europe. And its manufacturing output now dwarfs that of the United States by a significant margin. Meanwhile, the United States remains the incumbent power, the Sparta in this modern retelling, watching a rival state grow in almost every category that has historically determined global dominance. This is precisely the dynamic that led China's own president to raise the term directly in conversation with an American president in 2026, not as an abstract academic reference, but as a real and immediate question both nations are quietly grappling with. It's worth pausing here on an important point. Not every historian agrees that Thucydides' trap is destiny. Critics have argued that framing U.S.-China tensions this way risks becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. That treating war as historically inevitable can itself push policymakers toward decisions that make conflict more likely rather than less. Allison himself has pushed back on the idea that his work predicts war is unavoidable. His stated purpose, in his own words, was never to predict the future. It was to help prevent it by giving leaders a clear enough picture of the pattern that they could consciously choose to avoid repeating it. So here's where that leaves us. 12 times in 500 years, the fear between a rising power and a ruling one has ended in devastating war. 4 times, careful leadership found a way through it instead. The pattern itself doesn't choose the outcome. The people living through it do, which means the real question isn't whether history is repeating itself right now between 2 of the most powerful nations on Earth. It's whether anyone currently in a position of power has actually studied what happened the last 16 times, closely enough to avoid becoming case number 17. If patterns like this fascinate you as much as they fascinate me, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive. And if this one gave you something to think about, a like on this video genuinely helps more people find it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.